morning. I'm Linda Shearer, and I'm the Executive Director of Project Row Houses. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to Project Row Houses and the historic El Dorado Ballroom. For those of you who were here last night, I know you enjoyed the amazing conversation between Rick Lowe, Theaster Gates, and Mark Bradford with Valerie Cassell-Oliver. And we're in for another treat today with two sessions, one on architecture and planning in the Third Ward this morning, and in the afternoon, the session is titled Inside Social Practice Art. Our keynote address by Professor George Lipsitz will take place at 11:15. There'll be time for lunch at 12:30, and food trucks will be available in the parking lot outside. And at the end of the sessions, around 4 o'clock, there'll be guided tours of Project Row Houses for anyone who's interested. We're going to try our best to stay on time. And I know I'm not setting a very good example because it's already after 9:30, but I promise I will be quick. And just to repeat a few words from last night, this symposium is in honor of our 20th anniversary. It was 20 years ago that 7 African-American artists turned a dream into a reality by transforming 22 abandoned 1930s shotgun houses into spaces for artists to experiment, for neighborhood children to learn confidence and creativity through the arts, for single mothers to become empowered through the support of a strong safety net, for the tradition of vernacular architecture to be valued, and then build new spaces for affordable housing designed in the shotgun style, all within the neighborhood of the Northern Third Ward of Houston. PRH has always envisioned its role as a catalyst for change in its community. What these artists didn't realize when they started was that they were pioneering an art movement that has only recently been identified as social practice. Our hope is that this weekend will provide all of you with the opportunity to absorb the particular insights of our speakers and moderators, to ask questions, to investigate the meaning of this term, and to help define what is meant by it, to have conversations and to connect practice with justice through a range of manifestations. Many people and organizations have made this weekend possible, and I would like to thank them. First, I'd like to acknowledge the founders of Project Row Houses, Jesse Locke, Rick Lowe, Floyd Newsom, Bert Samples, who is here, George Smith, and the late James Benson and Bert Long. I'd like to thank the Board of Directors, led so skillfully by Amanda Edwards, our president, the 20th Anniversary Committee, co-chaired by Rebecca Trahan and Emily Todd, and the entire staff of Project Row Houses. Every single person has contributed to this endeavor, especially Cecilia Pham, who is our individual giving and special events manager. I'd like to make a special note of Ryan Dennis, the public art director, who has been the primary force in shaping and designing this symposium. Thank you, Ryan. I'd like to also thank Betsy Sapina Zinn, the symposium fellow from Rice University, who has been Ryan's right-hand person throughout all of this. Thank you, Betsy. Special thanks are due to all of our sponsors, but especially to Chevron for its ongoing support and to the city's initiative grant program of the Houston Arts Alliance from the mayor's office specifically for the symposium. And on behalf of all of you here, I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to all of our speakers. It is now my great pleasure to turn over the proceedings to Danny Samuels and Nonya, who will moderate this this first session. Danny and Nonya have been Project Row House partners since 1996. Am I right? Because I think there's been some discrepancy of the beginning date. With their Rice Building workshop at Rice University, where they are director and associate director, respectively. Their students have designed and built many projects and houses here on site. And if you go on the tour, and if you know our site, a few of them are the extra small house, the zero house, and the most recent project, Friedman's Townhouse, among others. And I think Nonya is going to come up and introduce the panel. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Last night, Rick said that as an artist, he had the opportunity to bring people together, to create a platform for others to engage in the creative process. In 1996, Danny and I wanted to get our architecture students out of the classroom and into the community. We met with Rick to seek his advice, and Rick said, well, we have this lot back here, and so it began. For the past 18 years, and with over 500 students, we've participated in design-build projects that focus on small, affordable, sustainable houses. These projects have been done in full collaboration with Project Row Houses, where our students have had the extraordinary opportunity to work in this vibrant and historic setting. Our collaboration has resulted in a range of projects: single-family houses, duplexes, renovations, and general site planning. Rick offered us a platform, but also so much more. In our design reviews, site visits, and during construction, he has given us and the students greater insights into the beauty and power of this neighborhood. Each of our panelists are also engaging the community in various ways. Jeffery Lowe is an associate professor in the Department of Urban Planning and Environmental Policy at Texas Southern University. He has also been on the faculty at Columbia, Florida State, and Jackson universities, and has served as associate director of the Mid-Sized Cities Policy Research Institute in the graduate program in city and regional planning at the University of Memphis. Lowe's research focuses on social justice and racial equity concerns within the context of community development and housing. He is the author of Rebuilding Communities the Public Trust Way, Community Foundation Assistance to CDC's 1980 to 2000, and he is published in several other national journals. Jeffery arrived in Houston a little over a year ago and offers a fresh look at Houston and its planning policies. Patrick Peters, an architect and University of Houston professor, has both in his professional and academic work consistently focused on green building and designing for energy efficiency. His creative work has earned numerous local and national design awards and has been featured in national and international design publications. Patrick has led the University of Houston Graduate Design Build Studio since 1994. And under his leadership, the studio has completed 24 permanent public works of sustainable architecture in the greater Houston community. Patrick recently received the Educator Award from the Houston chapter of the American Institute of Architects in recognition of his many years of teaching and of offering graduate students the valuable opportunity to measure the quality of their design thinking against the rigorous standards of built reality. Nicola Springer leads the pre-K through 12 team at Kirksey Architecture in Houston, where she has focused on design education and educational design for the past 10 years. Her work in this area extends into the classroom, where she volunteers with high school students as they explore the profession of architecture. Nicola has been a primary organizer of a yearly high school design competition sponsored by Kirksey and AIA Houston. And as a result, many students have received scholarships for further architectural education. Nicola was born in Barbados, received a Bachelor of Arts in Architecture from Princeton University, and looking for a warmer climate, came to Rice for her master's. She decided to stay in Houston, and we've been lucky to have her. She was honored as the 2009 AIA Houston Young Architect of the Year. Together, these panelists offer a range of perspectives on Houston and this special neighborhood where we are today. I'll turn it over to Danny to focus our discussion on an overview of issues facing the Third Ward.
Patrick, Nicola, Jeffery, Nonya, and Danny.
Come join us in our living room.
Okay, is this live? Yes? Okay, so we have had there's obviously a pretty high-powered academic and professional group of architects and planners here. And we've had some great conversations over the last few months and few years as we contend with these problems. So I'd like to just present the general scenario in its most general sense. So we remember that there was once a vibrant community with its own unique history, culture, and ambiance here. Things changed, but not for the better. Freeways came, families left, leaving neighborhoods depleted, and the community fabric frayed. There was a dwindling aging population, schools lost students, employment centers and shopping moved out, unemployment increases, housing stock, mostly rental, deteriorates, and crime increases. Things start to change again after some years. After the neighborhood bottoms out, then it becomes a prime area of growth for developers seeking the best located, least expensive land. But what they do has no particular benefit to the long-time community residents. In fact, property values increase, landowners sell out, new housing is built, but it's much more expensive than the existing housing stock. New residents move in, which is not necessarily bad, not for schools, because they're not moving here for the schools, they're moving because they want to be close to employment. And hopefully they appreciate the aspect of urbanity. Density increases, not bad. City service and infrastructure improves, not bad. Taxes increase, bad. And historic residents have no foothold in their own community anymore. So you may have recognized this as a description of the Third Ward, but it's also a common history of so many neighborhoods in so many cities. It's happening everywhere, it's happening continually. It's a kind of cycle that cities go through. And in light of the discussion last night, you seldom have an urban environment of stability, but usually it's fluidity, things change. So sometimes it's difficult to keep a place, and it's also difficult to make a place because things happen. So the question for our panelists is, the general question is, that we keep coming up against is, as things change, as they inevitably will, how can the architect and the planner encourage a situation that respects and remembers the history and culture of the community and makes a place for the historic residents who've always lived here be specific? And also, I want to add one other thing. Do not use the word gentrification. Okay? I am so tired of that word. Okay, so I'm just going to turn it over. I'm hoping that somehow we can sort of re-spark the discussions that we've had over the months. Does anybody want to jump in?
If you're looking at me, I'll start. We have the privilege and responsibility through the University of Houston College of Architecture to bring students into focus on these issues. At the same time that they're learning to be architects, we hope they're learning to be responsible citizens. And I think the first answer that's specific is for the process just to find a way to slow down the process whenever possible. It may be through the agency of organizations like Project Grow Houses and its CDC, that the processes in some areas can slow down, and that you can be given the opportunity to consider some of the implications. Regarding the opportunity that the students have to do this work, we at the same time are given the opportunity to be agents of change, but given the opportunity to be agents of change on a very small scale, in an extremely limited field of play. And so by definition, it's extremely incremental. And I think that is a model that our students can carry out of the experience, is that through incremental change, you can both do good and do good work, but not upset the apple cart all at once.
Good morning, everyone. So I will begin by saying, I think last night we had 3 of the 4 major cities represented in terms of population. Houston is the 4th largest city, right? We also had LA, which is number 2, and Chicago, number 3. So given that I'm certainly new to Houston, I almost feel an obligation that I'm representing New York, number 1, and also the planning profession. And as I've worked with students over the years, and certainly even here in Houston, I'm often, if I can kind of juxtapose my position here, I've often reminded our students of the words of Daniel Burnham. A little over 100 years ago, planning started in Chicago with the plan of Chicago. Daniel Burnham was an architect and planner. And his encouragement was, make no little plans, for it doesn't have the ability to stir men's and women today, certain blood. So aim high and work hard with hope and promise. And so I think with that being said, much of planning, and certainly the work that I've been involved in, deals with how do we change communities for the better, for residents who currently live there, thinking long term. And often for that to happen, it takes us into the area of policy development, policy formulation. Now the hope is, because planning is also conflictual, the hope is as we develop those, and what we work towards actually, is as we develop those policies and plans or policies, is that they capture community values. And without mentioning the word, I think what we find is that as communities change, often they don't happen to the benefit of community because they conflict with community values. Typically the market is one that's certainly driven by, I argue, by profit making. And oftentimes when profit making occurs, community members get left out. And so what we see are changes, particularly not just in population, but cultural changes. Perhaps what we need and what we find in many communities, I would submit, is that we need to focus on values such as equity. When we talk and when we listen to much about the Third Ward, there was this sense that those who had less were given options So many of the row houses, for example, while there may have been homeowners in them, oftentimes they rented space to others. Another community value that I think deserves attention, and we've heard some things about sustainability, but I think perhaps we need to consider going back to some things, particularly that in attributes or values that have sustained communities and African American communities in particular, such as this notion of stewardship. What does stewardship mean? Particularly if we think locally, but actually globally, what does stewardship mean in an environment when everything is so, and how do we carry it out in an environment where such priority is given towards the market? So I think I'll just stop there.
So I would say the word I think of is reimagining. And as architects, a lot of our focus is on what we see. And as an architect that works with students, I'm trying to help them see the world around them, understand that environment, interpret it. But the other thing that we as architects, I think, have to learn to do is to listen. And our job is not just to help reimagine what that environment looks like, but to listen to the stories and help the people that are part of that community envision what their stories could be in this new environment. So I think what's important is really just a collaboration of people coming together. You hear their stories, understanding that things are going to have to change. How do you keep yourself with that change? We all have to engage each other to share what it is that is important, and then together come to figure out what it is that we can do to create that new environment. Because if there's one thing that is going to happen, it is going to change. It's not going to stay the same. And it's not that we want it to stay the same, we want to improve upon it. But very often, we can't see how to make that change. So we have to listen first to figure out what that change might be, and we as architects then help imagine that.
You know, I like the expanded notion of sustainability. I mean, sustainability, after all, has become so overused, almost as much as the G word. Not mentioning. But, you know, you mentioned sustainability, Jeffrey, as as important as it is in terms of being good stewards of Earth and the practical nature of sustainability. You mentioned an historic sustainability, a sustainable memory, and then there's also economic sustainability. So I might ask the group to think about the third ward in terms of its economic sustainability and the forces that are pushing against that.
The processes, as I understand them, of filling empty, voided spaces in this part of the city. Someone has an opportunity, someone has an idea, someone has the opportunity, and they seize that opportunity. That opportunity could be to develop a house for that person to live in, or a business, or that opportunity could be to leverage that available land for their personal or company gain. And it seems that what we're imagining is there's more benefit to the community if it's a blend of the two, rather than only one or the other. And that we are, as we go forward, we're imagining that putting more buildings in the city, in this part of the city, is good if it also brings more residents who are invested in the city. If my data is at all close, it looks to me like over the last 15 years, 3/4 of the population that were residents here are no longer here. Which means not only are there a lot of buildings, sites available be redeveloped, but also there are a lot of families, spaces for families to move here. Those people may not have a history, or they may be second generations who used to have a history who want to return because it's much better for their lives to be able to walk or ride a bike or bus or drive short distance to work rather than take a long commute. So the instruments of blending that development, I think, is what we're seeking to achieve the economic sustainability that you're asking about. And these policies Jeffrey was referring to, and instruments such as housing land trusts, are things that we probably need a lot more schooling here in Houston to find out.
Well, so sustainability. When I think of sustainability, I often, for me, is what do we do today that enhances our quality of life, as well as thinking about those in the future, generations to come, in a way that they will also have a better quality of life. And so historically, I think we have to recognize that certainly as change happens, it's just not this amorphous thing that kind of happens in the vacuum, okay? And that there were policies and structures that were put in place that led to the demise of the community. I think we have to recognize that. Across the country, for example, very typically, we saw highway development that cut off, if you will, the lifeblood of communities in a way that other communities benefited. Historically, in many places, and certainly Houston is very typical, as mobility options opened up for people, especially those who were living in African American communities, and they saw assets in other places. You know, many chose to move. And there are those who remained. And so I agree that as we talk about and think about community change, we want to make it in such a way that people have the options to choose to live wherever they want to. And as people come and often bring their financial wealth and political clout with them, various amenities also come in. I think what we want to also, again, focus on is let's call it the indigenous population of communities, also benefit as that change occurs. So looking at it from the aspect of a stewardship perspective, if I can tie that in with sustainability, I think the stewardship model also says, to a very large degree, we work and we're caretakers for, again, future generations to go. So they complement each other. Sustainability, I think, and stewardship. But it also requires a very important component as we think about the battles over land and use of land. I think it requires a focus on community organizing. Community organizing in a way that the community's voice is heard and is included, and I dare say even given priority in terms of what should take place that provides a variety of economic opportunities. Certainly housing is one dimension, jobs